Hello, everybody, and welcome to another quarantine edition of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric, and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be reviewing CC's staff pick of The Craft. Get ready for the 90s, y'all. We're talking about angst and
so much angst.
hair stuff and clothing and like chunky shoes. We got a lot to talk about tonight. I'm very excited to get into it.
And a really good soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah. The chunky shoes.
Well, I think we may also find out a little bit tonight about Joe's sexual proclivities, but we'll get there. We'll cross that bridge.
Way more than you guys want to know.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Joining me tonight, first up, our guest of honor tonight, the staff picker. Please welcome CC to the show.
Hello.
Next up, from Indiana, please welcome Casey.
Hi.
From Chi-Town, Illinois, please welcome Joe.
Hey, I have a really good Ruben Turney, or however you say her last name, story when we get to it. I'm very excited to tell.
Her name is not Ruben. She's not a sandwich. Her name is Robin.
Ruben.
I thought it was Robin Tunney. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, who are you talking?
John,
I
because
don't know why.
John,
I just glanced at IMDb and I don't know why I read Ruben.
John,
I like
because
that better.
Ruben Genie.
because
I
you
love him with
just
1,000
you just said a
hours.
name, John. Joe just said words.
Mhm.
Last up on the show tonight, he's currently in hiding in parts unknown, hiding from the COVID. Please welcome John Schnartz to the show.
Hello, Eric.
He's in a secretive compound. It's like the end of The Hunt when they're all in that weird little basement thing. He's wearing a kimono.
It's not so different.
I bet there's a kimono in that house somewhere, is all I'm saying.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Be from the 80s, though, for sure.
We, after John's horrifically depressing pick last week, we decided, A, John wasn't picking movies anymore, and B, we were going to do something happy. And we've been talking, well, maybe not happy, but fun, let's say. We've been talking a few weeks in the show about doing some more staff picks. We did Deep Red a few weeks ago, and now we are doing Cece's pick of The Craft. As a 90s child, I'm very excited to talk about this. We can get into that in a little bit, but first off, Joe, please tell us what we are drinking tonight.
Beer guts.
Oh, The Craft. A heartwarming tale of four young lasses practicing their witchcraft ways. One of those played by Ruben Tunney, who
Ruben Tooney.
puts a little hex on what the hell is that guy's name?
Skeet.
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 It's got to be a fake name, right? I've never looked this up, but
There has never been more of a punchable face and name put together.
Yeah,
Yes.
especially with the hair he has in this movie. His hair is very bad in this movie.
Anyway, so she puts a little spell on him, which makes him head over heels in love with her. And in honor of their wants and desires and my wants and desires that were rekindled during this movie, I picked a beer from the fine folks at Pollyanna Brewing Company. They're out in Lemont, Illinois. Probably saying that town wrong, but whatever. You're never gonna visit. Lemont, I believe his name. Anyway, the beer is their Kiwi Allure. Sensual desires. This beer is a Berliner Weiss, which I think I've done a few before, but pretty much it's a wheat beer that is super tart, or as the kids would call these days, sour or turned up, as I'm sure they're saying also.
How many have you already had?
I'm about one deep. But
I would've-
it's a big boy.
he's very connected to how kids and just humans talk, so
Yeah.
don't worry.
I'm on the Skypes and the Zooms and the tweets and the whatnot.
House party? Are you on a
yeah.
house party app?
A pajama jammy jam.
What is house
Anyway,
party?
Berliner Weiss, usually high or low in alcohol. This one comes in at only about 4.6% alcohol, so it's perfect for these warm days that are finally happening. Which you get outside, stay a safe distance, enjoy your time out there. But as I said, very tart, very sour. This one has like a lot of lemon in it. Usually a little higher in carbonation, so you get a little bit of that fizz. Definitely just like a summertime beer. So as it warms up, this is a great one to check out. PollyannaBrewing.com is their website, and yeah, they put out great stuff. I think they distribute pretty far. If not, just take a trip. I mean, what else you got going on with your life? Just
If
drive.
not, just drink mouthwash like the rest of us.
Yeah,
I'm
do
sorry.
what you got to do. I ordered a pipe off Amazon this weekend, Eric, because I got some flour, as the kids are calling it, from the dispensary. Yeah,
I like it.
yeah. I'm sick of waiting 2 hours for that to kick in. I want it immediately.
Damn, I like it.
Important question. Did you also order a grinder and a
I
lighter?
did. Yeah, it's well, I mean, I have a lighter. It's a one hitter because that's really all.
Now
me
that's
and
the way
missus need, but-
I think that's the way to go. Yeah. Listen, Joe, you're living the dream. I like that I've been hounding you about this for months, and if all it took was a global pandemic to get you to just break down and get the real thing.
Yeah, well, I'm just literally today. It was like the first nice day. It was like 70s here, and 2 days from now it drops back down to 40. But like I was working in our spare room, I had the window open, and I could smell the weed that my neighbor was smoking, and I'm like, I want to be a part of that. So
That is the correct
I'm very
response.
excited.
All right. Well, please report back.
Yeah, we'll
All
do.
right, guys, it is time. Let's take a quick break so that we can review The Craft.
This is it, Senator. Your big breaking TV. From the prime time. Main feature.
John Schnorrs.
Eric.
I just looked because I was curious. The Craft came out in 1996.
Correct.
So same year as Scream.
Mhm.
But before
Skeet Ulrich's year of Ulrich.
Skeet,
yeah,
skeet,
he
skeet,
really
skeet.
he really grew his hair out an impressive amount in the like 6 months between movies. So this came out in May, and Scream came out in December. So Scream kind of capped. Which is weird that you'd really Scream in December, but what do I know?
Yeah.
I
No.
don't remember that. I don't think I ever saw that until video.
Strange Days there in 1996.
John, how did you feel about the fact that you could be one of the background villains in this movie?
Wait, background. Which? Wait,
Like,
hold on.
You were
The
definitely
villains are just like the bro douches that that lived at this high school.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think that's what he's alluding to, Joe.
Yeah,
What's the point?
Listen, Joe, I've been here long enough. So
You know,
your
I
role,
heard the
right?
words coming
No.
out of my mouth, and then I was
There's-
piecing it together.
there's like an actual conversation we had at some point, and I'm sure we'll get there, about how realistic the high school is, because I think this
Oh my
actually
God.
sits like pretty. I don't know. Like, there's a couple characters that are way too far, but then there's some like. what's
You
the guy's
always say
name?
you always say that, and you're always wrong.
No. Hold on. The Skeet Ulrich character and his friends, like those were believable. The
I
what?
have a lot of opinions about
All
this,
right,
John. It's
save it
very
for the
exciting.
movie. My point is,
yeah, let's save it. All
my
right.
point is, you're hanging out with Breckenmeyer in the background, making boner jokes. That's all I'm
Breckenmeyer,
trying to say.
that's what I was trying to think of.
Uh,
Yeah, he's cool. Why wouldn't you want to hang out with him in high school?
all I'm
This is
saying
what I'm
is, it reminded me of the classic Schnars character, which is a good segue into the word of the day. All I'm saying, John, is I think a lot of these guys ended up at Duke.
Stop. No, they were not smart enough. Here's the thing, Eric. Today's word, Hector.
Oh,
Hector. Hector talked to someone in a bullying way, which is something that many of the teens here at what was the name of the high school? Does anyone know off the top of their head?
Nope.
I don't know. Generic Catholic Los Angeles high school. They all talk to each other this way. There's a lot of like bully kind of like mean talk going on that I don't know, that part I found maybe a little over the top. But so Hector, that's the only definition. Comes to us from so I'm gonna just read this from the Google search here. Late Middle English, from the Trojan warrior Hector, originally denoting a hero. The sense later became braggart or bully, based on basically members of a gang in London that must have like used that name or that phrase to denote themselves. And it comes to us, all the way. It becomes what it is to us all the way from there. So, Hector.
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 All right. Cece,
Yes.
tell us why you picked The Craft and tell us what it's about.
Well, I mean, I picked The Craft because it's about witches. It was a very
I like the drum.
yeah, I mean, look, I'm very well aware it's very campy and cheesy, but growing up it was a very I think it was one of the first movies I saw that had witches in it, which was really cool, and it was a very at a very developmental time in my my growth. But anyway,
Same, Cece. Same.
yes, I can't wait to hear all about this.
Joe
Joe.
was like, were you like 22 when this movie came out?
No, he was a Joe 96. Joe was like a freshman in high school.
No,
No,
I was a
senior
in high school.
senior.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I was a freshman, I think.
When did this come out? What month did we say?
90,
May.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, I would have been a junior, like just about to go into my senior year.
Oh Lord.
Cool. I was 9.
Mm.
Not even double digits. But anyway, so The Craft is a nice little supernatural ditty that basically starts out with this girl Sarah, who is Robin or Ruben,
Played by
Tooney.
Ruben Tooney.
Yes, who shows up or moves from San Francisco to LA and starts at this Catholic school, and she's already kind of the outcast. And while she's there, she meets up with these 3 other girls who are also outcasts and just so happen to be into really witchy things, and they think that it's a divine event that Robin Tooney has shown up and that she's completing their magical circle. And essentially they kind of start practicing their abilities, and as high schoolers do, you don't really realize the consequences in what you're doing. So yeah, things start out pretty well, and when they make their way back to them, the consequences are a little more intense than they were initially expecting. So yeah.
Very succinct. Thank you, Cece.
Thanks.
Joe,
Yes.
what'd you think, buddy?
Tell us about your sexual awakening.
I don't think you want to open up this can of worms.
Well,
I mean,
let's-
I do,
let's get
'cause I
through
just did.
Let's get through the round table
We're all
first.
quarantined.
Um,
I mean, I know Pornhub is free, but so is this. So let's go.
but it wasn't when this movie came out, Cece, and that's where this story begins.
That's a really Joe. Listen, that's a not insignificant point you're making.
yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
So
So this was the introduction of gentleman boners, right? That's where this came. Okay.
Cece, there was nothing
Listen.
gentlemanly about what I was doing. So it's weird. So when this came out on BHS, which is where I saw this, I probably would have been in my senior year in high school. So this was like prime awakenings. And for whatever
Prime
reason,
alone nights. Just
for whatever
like-
reason, I've seen this movie 20 plus times.
Wait, no. We know what reason. You literally
Yeah.
are telling us right now whatever reason.
Not all of those times were alone in intimate settings.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it was one of those things where the group I hang out with,
Y'all did it together? That's very progressive of you.
I believe the term is ookie cookie.
No.
Oh my god.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna go on mute for a little while.
Cece, stop
You know, Cece, I
encouraging
thought you were
him.
gonna curl in a ball for this, and I love that you're egging
Nope.
it on.
Let's go.
So yeah, so I rented this and watched it, and then it was just one of those things that anytime we would rent a bunch of movies and drink in somebody's basement, this movie always showed up. Definitely the females in our group were big fans of it, so I feel like they always kind of had it around too. So I've seen this movie a ton of times from start to finish, and then randomly on HBO in clips and pieces. And I always really enjoyed it, and I was actually really excited when Cece decided, my wants and desires aside, I always thought it was a really fun movie. And I think a really good introduction to horror for people. That being said, there's definitely looking at this through a lens and looking back on it now, it definitely falls into the trap of movies that Like, oh, the movie that always pops in my head that goes like so over the top on like stereotypes and like quote unquote message is Higher Learning. And like there's definitely a lot of that
You know what's
here.
really funny, Joe, is I actually made that exact connection while watching it. I wasn't thinking of it in a negative way, but I was like, just because of the way that it's, I mean, whatever, we can get to it more, but the way that it's really out there and dealing with sexual politics in a very similar way that Higher Learning is.
There's that, and then there's also, so Christine Taylor plays kind of the mean girl who's like pretty much every one of these women in the movie have like a bully of some sort. And Christine Taylor plays the bully of what is it, Rochelle? What's her name in this?
Yeah, Rochelle.
Who, by the way, is like almost 30 when she was filmed.
Yeah, they were all in
yeah.
their 20s.
But like, it's interesting because they make her so over the top. Like literally, she's like, she doesn't say the N-word, but like she might as well be like in settings in front of people. And it's like, yes, obviously there was racism in the 90s, but like I don't think anyone in like an LA high school was like throwing out that stuff in like large groups.
Well, not to
I don't know, man.
I agree.
I don't know.
I agree. That part to me was one of the most over the top because I 100% think that shit was being said behind people's backs.
for
and like
sure.
I knew
backs.
people
But-
in the
but
90s that were
as a-
saying shit like that. But
As a
you know.
quick note, like Rachel True was cast, and the role that she was cast for wasn't written biracial. Like it was written for a white girl, so they rewrote it and put in the racial subtext. So I think they were probably. It seems heavy-handed because it was added after the fact.
Yeah,
They're
now that you
overcompensating.
say that, like,
Which I mean, I'm not saying I'm sure people were racist as hell all the
Yeah.
time, but
it's
it
just
seems heavy-handed in this movie because of that.
it's just it was interesting to me that like there was that, and there was also, again, this is like a high school in LA, and there was one black girl in this school and like it felt like, all right, let's put her there and let's make this a thing. Like,
But that's just
So-
because they liked Rachel True so
Well,
much.
but I
which
think it's-
she's
rightfully
awesome.
so.
I
That-
love her.
that's
Like,
the kind of interesting dynamic of the movie, is that it is really interestingly deep and progressive, but also it was still made in the mid 90s, and so
It
you still
feels
have
very, like,
limitations
pointed,
like
like-
that. Yeah.
we're doing this so we can have this message, and we're doing this so we can have this message. Like there's a lot of that, which is a very like 90s thing.
But it was pretty groundbreaking. I think it was, as far as horror films go, that was my biggest takeaway going back.
I mean, it still holds up. Like there's definitely a lot of things, and like obviously what they're wearing and everything is very dated, but like this movie, which they're working on a remake, which I'm pretty excited about, like I think it translates pretty well to now. So yeah, overall I've always been a really big fan of this.
Casey.
Yeah, I've been a fan of this movie for a long time. Since we decided, declared that Joe was a junior in high school and CC was 9. This movie's a year older than my marriage.
But that's
So there's
Indiana.
that.
Like, you could have been married when you were.
I was the one that was 22 when this came out.
If CC was in Indiana, she could have been married when this came.
That's fair. No, this has always been a good movie. It's one that my wife and I enjoyed when we were dating way early on. My wife has her witchy tendencies from the past too, so it spoke to her quite a bit. It was neat to see, like Eric mentioned, how some of it did seem kind of progressive for the mid 90s with what they were coming out with and everything that was coming around with it. I thought they did a good job with the high school themes, with the bullying and everything like that, seeing some of the revenge plots coming around. And they even did a good job of making up what these girls' spells and stuff that they're casting were going to come up with, and actually like piecing it together and not seeming too cheesy, too silly. It wasn't spot on from what I know, but for like something that's real Wiccan.
Which, can I say something about that? It's really interesting, and I love reading about movies that are really heavily witchy or pagan or Wiccan or just spiritual in general, especially like The Darkest Song. So this movie had a pagan advisor, and everything is technically based on real stuff, but the advisor was like, it's super disrespectful to put this out in a movie, but the advisor was also really worried about it becoming a really popular movie, which no one thought it would be that popular of a movie. But they were like, if it becomes a really popular movie, you're going to have all these like teenage girls trying to like do these actual spells. So it's probably best that you don't do that. So I thought that was really interesting.
Everybody playing light as a feather, stiff as a board. Just no, but they just really quick on that. They the thing I was somewhat confused because the Manon,
it's Manon.
it's fake. Like it's
Yeah.
not a
Well,
real.
it's based on a real thing. It's based on Mana, which is
But
the
it's-
female moon deity.
But I was just confused because I literally was like searching Manon and being like, what the hell,
No,
you know? And
you
then
gotta
it's
say it like
yeah.
all. You gotta say it all French, like how Fairuza Balk says in this movie. It's like
Manon.
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 John, what do you think?
Yeah, so I had never seen this movie.
Oh, that's right.
I was coming in. I was a craft virgin, I guess. You know, I mean, Joe.
Not
longs
Joe.
for the thing,
I'm
but,
sorry you didn't get to watch it by yourself, John.
No, it's funny. It was like the first time that I can remember where my wife had seen a movie that we were covering on the show that I had never seen.
Did she like it?
Yeah. She was down to watch it with me, and like ended up she just like had other shit she had to do. But
Leslie and I watched this Saturday night and got drunk together, and it was a blast.
yeah, like I totally agree. This movie is it's really well made, right? Like I was looking at the director. He's not like a super big name director or anything, but he's done a bunch of movies. It's funny because most of his work is comedy work. So he's done like a bunch of. He did Hamlet 2. Did you guys ever see Hamlet 2?
Oh my God, Rock Me Sexy Jesus.
Yeah. So he's done a bunch of movies, you know, in that kind of vein. He helped co-write this thing. It is written and directed by men, which I thought was a little interesting. I don't know, like it felt like true to like as we were talking about a little bit of that kind of like 90s high school experience, but then also like it's very Hollywoodized, right? Like you guys were talking about the what was it, Dangerous Minds, like the other kind of like high school films.
Well, I think the 90s high school experience in film in the 90s, the 80s too, but in the 90s especially, there's always been a kind of like California-centric bent to it, just because that's where so many of the movies were made.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Like, as soon as I saw that this movie was set in LA, that kind of also, I don't know.
Is somebody typing their autobiography
Yeah,
right now? What's happening?
Yes, sorry, I thought I muted.
No, but I don't know. Like the thing that I was like a little surprised, not surprised, but it's both very like sort of feminine or like feminist, I guess, if you want to go all the way there. But at the same time, like they're sexy witches. Like they're all attractive. Like
Well,
the
you
funniest.
can't be
Go on,
sexy and a
John.
feminist.
No. But, like, I just mean like a lot of the
Wrong with
plot
being
lines, like
sexy, John.
no, but a lot of the plot lines, like
John,
kind of,
do you
like,
want to just
hinge
stop
on
so I can
their-
go now? Do you
No,
want to just back
their
away?
plot lines. Sorry, just really quick. The plot lines hinge on their sort of like appearance and like I don't know. So it was very interesting. I ended up liking
teenagers are very vain, John.
it a lot. True.
And they're also teenagers that have been bullied specifically because of their
Yeah.
appearances.
And I mean, I think the one that it hinges on her appearance, like, there's a reason for that. Like, she has some like real issues going on there, John.
we should come back to the Nev Campbell one because that was the one that I had the hardest time.
Yeah, it was
believing.
it was
Like,
tough.
she had like some scars, yes, they were bad, on her back that no one could see, and then all of a sudden she was like super sexy Nev Campbell, but you couldn't see.
And we're
any
okay with
different.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I don't know, but
I was very okay with it, Jim.
yeah, no. it was-
I'm also a very big fan of this movie. My experience with this, I'm sure that I rented it a bunch back in the day because I just rented a ton of movies in this era, especially. But I feel like I've caught it on like TBS specifically dozens of times.
Yeah.
Like TBS, TNT. I feel like Turner owned this thing for years for the cable rights. And it's just one of those movies that I think found I don't know how it did at the box office, but definitely found a cult audience between TV and home video and stuff. Again, another
It was
interesting.
number. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I read it was #1 at the box office.
Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So it did well.
everyone talked about it being a surprise hit, and it
Yeah.
had a 55% approval on Rotten Tomatoes.
And I think these movies, like we talked about this when we talked about The Shining, that even when they do good, I think they just, in the 90s especially, they got such a second life on cable and video, and then
Yeah.
are sort of discovered by successive generations. So that part of it's interesting. To me, like to really understand how interesting the like social aspects of this film are, you really have to put it in context, which if you weren't around at the time is like a little tough. But I've been watching a ton of 80s movies lately, and to say that this movie, like the sexual politics in this movie are so the polar opposite of everything I've been watching from the 80s. Like it's actually insane. And the 90s get a lot shit on a lot as far as horror films because the slasher kind of died out in the early 90s, they didn't know what to do with it. But what happened was that when you did have these breakout movies, they were really unique. It was stuff like this, stuff like Candyman, Blair Witch Project, right? Like once Scream came out, that's kind of changed again because then Hollywood just had something else to kind of, blueprint copy. But this thing, like, in a weird way, this movie would almost feel more at home today than it would back then. Like, all female cast. We're talking about issues of like female adolescents growing up and bullying, dealing with, guys, dealing with social pressures and pressures to look good and stuff. Like, so there are these over the top things, and I understand that, but there's actually, for me, the most shocking, not shocking, but like the interesting thing for me in the rewatch is that there's a ton of nuance, because the other three girls that aren't Ruben Tooney, they become villains in the third act, but they're still, with the exception of maybe Fairuza Balk, who goes like full villain, the other two are still pretty sympathetic. Like, they're kind of being pulled along, and we spend the whole second act, first and second act, like getting to like these characters and understanding their insecurities and their plights. Like, that to me is kind of what's so interesting about the nuance of this movie, is like we spend half of it getting to like these characters that then turn evil because of sort of this power that they've unleashed that they don't fully understand and can't deal with, you know what I mean? But that gives it layers. So even though, like, on the one hand it is this teen thing with, like, yes, I should know her name, Ben Stiller's wife, whose name I always forget.
Christine Taylor.
Yes, Christine Taylor.
I just think of her as Melody from Hey Dude.
Hey Dude, yeah, no. If you want to
Are
talk
they
about,
still together?
you want to talk about childhood crushes, John, let's talk about Hey Dude. But
God.
yeah, like, so yes, there is this over-the-top high school aspect to it, but I was like, wow, there's actually a lot of really interesting character stuff going on here. And that's in addition to the great atmosphere, really fun effects. Like, certainly there's some 90s cheesiness to some of the effects, but a lot of in-camera stuff. I love the weird way they did, like, when she changes her hair. They're doing some kind of weird green screen shit there that's kind of corny, but just looks so interesting to look back on because it has character. You know what I mean? Because like the only bad effect I think in the whole movie is the snake fingers
Walking on water.
No, that looks awesome. I love that. The snake
Wasn't
fingers, because like that was the one scene that was like just really bad CGI, and like mid 90s CGI was just the drizzling shits. But the rest of it I really loved. I love the finale. The finale is really creepy and intense. It's got this great like funhouse vibe to it. I agree with Joe and everybody. Like, I think this thing really holds up.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what they do with the remake because it's being done by
The
what's her name?
Blums.
Yeah, but shit, I don't.
Is there a director attached?
There is. She is from something that I am forgetting the name of right now,
Oh,
but
good.
I
This is-
really
this
enjoy
is
her
going well.
work. What's that show? Casey used to watch it with Colin.
Oh,
Hanks.
Zoe Lister Jones. It's
oh, that's
she's,
right.
Oh,
she
yeah.
was from Whitney and New Girl,
New Girl.
Yeah.
Delocated, Life in Pieces.
Life in
Life in
Pieces,
Pieces.
yes.
That's it.
Life
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Pieces,
She's
yeah.
awesome. I love
Yeah.
her. I cannot wait to see what she does with this. I am very excited.
I didn't know she was directing the remake. That is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, she's the writer to write and direct it, so I think
Yeah.
it'll be really good.
Yeah, I got high hopes.
Which, like, I think that normally I have such a like love-hate relationship with reboots, but I really think that I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but like this is just such a, I guess from me and like for being such a like nostalgic movie, like it's such a quintessential capsule of like adolescence that
Yeah.
I mean, my friends and I were collecting sticks and shit and trying to mix random things up in the woods, and then to see a movie about that, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just really.
But it nails
So you
the-
were the kids that the pagan advisor was worried about.
Yeah.
But I think it
I
nails.
was exactly that child.
I think it nails like the universal stuff too, though. Like we were saying, like those insecurities, right? Like
Yeah,
even
for
if
sure.
you know,
And,
like even if you're not in their exact position, I think you can. Most people can understand that kind of
Well,
bullying. And,
most people have been like, well, I really wish that like this were different about my
Yeah.
experience, or like I could experience it in a different way, or I wish I were as cool or as popular. So, to see that kind of, to see you get that, and then to see these consequences happen, you're like, well, maybe it's not so bad that I'm not
yeah, I
getting
mean,
what I thought I wanted.
when you boil it down, it's almost like that classic like genie, three
Yeah.
wishes, or like monkey paw kind of thing, right? Like kind of be
Mhm.
careful,
Yeah.
careful what you wish
Well,
for.
I would say too, it's also like the archetypal sexual awakening
Hmm.
mixed with the occult. I mean,
Yeah.
you see it in a lot of horror films whether it's like werewolves or vampire, like it's
Yeah.
someone's becoming aware of their own power and individuality at the same time that they're also
There
becoming
was-
they're
Yeah.
being
I don't-
they have to choose between good and evil, I guess.
I think to Cece's point too, like the fun thing about a remake of this is this movie, like obviously was a big influence on a lot of kids like Cece's age and older, and like I actually think it's kind of exciting that they're gonna do a remake and like kind of reboot it for modern days. And like if my daughter was like a little older, like I would love it if like I could take her to see that and like get her into like spooky shit because of this
Yeah.
movie. Like
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's awesome that they're doing that.
Well, it's going to be interesting with the remake in mind too, because like John said, this was a male director that directed this.
Mhm.
As a male watching this, especially when it first came out in '96, it seems like they didn't do bad on a portrayal of things that females have to deal with in high school,
Sure.
right?
There is an
So,
interesting. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so they did a fairly decent job, it seems, from a male directed point of view. So now that this remake's going to be rebooting this, directed by a female who's lived through that stuff, be pretty exciting to see how it turns out.
Well, again, it's a
Different.
movie. It's a movie that feels very at home today, and so yeah, I think
Yeah.
it'll be.
Yeah.
It's pretty ripe for reimagining. There was like this. It's funny because the one thing that's sort of like, kind of stuck in my craw a little bit about this, like just looking at back through 2020 Morse, right, is like they injected this like little thread. So like Robin Tunney kind of likes Skeet Ulrich. And in the beginning of the movie, they're kind of making out, and she's like, oh, I want to go home, whatever. And it's fine. He lets her go. He's a little like, he's a little weird about it, but he lets her go. Tells the whole school the next day that he had sex with her. And to me, like, so then he straight up like gets rapey with her later in the movie. Now, in the movie's point of view, he's under a spell at that point, right? But he wasn't under a spell at the point he told the whole school he had sex with her. Then in the third act, like, she straight up is like defending him, and she's like, "Oh, I think he's a good person underneath," and it's just like, I mean, like,
Okay.
that was weird. I thought.
Yeah.
Like I totally agree with you, and I get what you're saying 100%. But I mean, I think that goes to the whole. I mean, you have to think about it. Like we're saying, this is a teenage girl, and her one wish in the whole world is to have this guy like be so obsessed with her so that she can reject him. So I mean, like her wants are a little skewed because she's wanting to feel in control of something. So I think that that kind of, I took it as it really trying to focus on the fact that like she didn't realize that like this, like he's a really bad dude, like he's not a good dude in general.
That's what I'm saying.
And
Yeah.
to like,
But I like to see. I mean, to your point, like I liked that she realized super early on that it was a huge mistake.
yeah,
Like
for
she
sure.
realizes like day
Yeah.
2, she's like, this
Yeah.
probably wasn't great, and so she does increasingly feel bad. I actually felt like his behavior and then her response was like one of the more sort of honest
Yeah,
things in the. And again, like I don't know, it's weird. It's always weird when you're 37 years old trying to like put yourself back in high school to be like, for example, like I don't remember people lying about having sex with other people in my
John,
school. Like
John,
it wasn't like a thing that happened.
Every
but,
time this
it-
comes up, though, you say this stuff, you're always wrong. Every time we have a high school
Yeah.
conversation, you're always like, I don't think people are mean in high school. Everybody was nice to me.
No. Again, like maybe I went to like a different high school than other people.
Oh,
but, like,
you did.
I don't think that kind of thing happened, but I 100% knew girls and to some extent guys who would like embarrass themselves basically because of people that they liked and like wanted to like them back. You know what I mean? Like you saw that shit all the time.
Yeah,
So
John.
it's that to
Yeah,
me
John,
felt like
that
really
happened.
honest.
I always loved
No,
it.
no,
It's funny watching this back. Like I always this there's just like very colorful characters in this movie. Like Fairuza Balk's mom, who's like this kind of like white trash lady. They live in a trailer, and her husband kicks the bucket after the spell, and she gets a bunch of money, which is
I don't think
hilarious.
it's her husband.
First
Isn't
of
that
all,
like
It's like her stepdad or like the guy that moved in after her dad died.
But first of all, though,
left
like
or-
it's a hilarious '90s thing. It's like you've won $200,000. You're
Yeah.
gonna be rich for
Yeah,
life. And
it
it's
was
like,
$175,000.
Yeah.
and then they're
That's
living
when
in
they
this
were like,
high-rise apartment. It's like,
Ooh.
bro, that's like that'll cover your deposit for that thing, maybe.
Not even
I
a
know.
high-rise apartment, a high-rise apartment in fucking LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Which
my
is
first
kind of
thought, too,
hilarious,
when they
but
said that.
I always kind of like that character's always kind of interesting. Now looking back, like as a parent, I get this weird twinge where you see this scene, and again, like it's just like these little character things that this movie does really well in a subtle way, where they're moving on up and they're living in this high rise, and she's all excited of showing them her Connie Francis jukebox,
so sweet.
and then she wants to hang out with them, and they just like run away in the other room. I was like crushed as an adult watching this scene because it's just like I feel like I'm watching scenes from my future. Like not exactly, but that's a real human like parent thing, right? And like I don't know, it's just interesting to watch these things back with different eyes, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
I mean-
say
No, go
That
ahead,
bit-
Casey.
I was going to say to that feeling in particular, that lasts until a certain age and they start to hit the teenage years. And as the dad, when they're all partying at the house, you don't want to be in the same room with them.
There's also the other scene where there's a couple funny like parent scenes in this movie where when they're about to do light as a feather, stiff as a board, and Nev Campbell's mom is like, "Are you kids getting high?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Which
Susie,
is
how many
which-
times did you guys
which
play
is-
light as a feather?
which
stiff
is
as a
really-
board?
I mean,
really good
should I
foreshadowing.
admit that we literally just did it last Halloween? So to have a bunch of 30-year-old women being like, no, we're totally going to make this happen.
I have to say that asking if they're getting high right before that scene is actually pretty brilliant foreshadowing.
I thought it happened right afterwards because
didn't think about
Rachel
that.
True is like in the air. And when her mom opens the door, Rachel
Oh,
True
she
Oh,
comes
okay, well,
crashing
still,
down, right?
okay,
Yeah.
it's,
still,
okay,
yeah.
it's,
I
po-
mean,
it's
I mean,
post-shadowing.
it's really, really cleverly done for sure.
Yeah, I know. I love the way it's shot. Like,
Mhm.
and then how her eyes are closed, and then she kind of opens them and realizes she's like eye level with all them. I love.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of this movie, I think, is just really cleverly shot. The other scene that always really sticks out to me is when they're calling the four corners on the beach and just the lightning crashing on the ocean, and that scene's really great. And then there's a really
Well, it's
great.
really iconic. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people remember that scene.
Yeah.
That scene in the "Where We Are the Weirdos" Mr. scene.
And I
Yeah.
like the walking on water scene. It's certainly, listen, it's got a 90s touch to it, but
Yeah.
immediately after that, there's this, like, probably my favorite shot in the movie is where a jib is following them as they hear sirens, and then the jib pulls up and pans and backs out, and you see all the dead sharks lined up down the beach. Like, it's just a really great lyrical kind of like the way it follows their attention, you know? I love that scene. And that's it's just a creepy image. And then
Oh, yeah.
Frieza
Especially
Balk.
with
The-
Fruzuka or whatever the hell her name is, like running
Fruzuka.
around screaming.
That's a really interesting thing, though, is how quickly this movie turns. Like, we actually spend way more time getting to know these characters, developing their emotional inner lives, than we really do shit hitting the fan. Like, once they call the corners, it's like 2 scenes until Fruza Balk is full on evil, and
Yeah,
then we're in the
yeah,
house
it does.
basically.
Well, the movie, so it's sort of a weird horror movie in that you don't know who the bad guy is, and like there's even a conversation to be had around. It's like, is Faruga, is she Faruza?
It's not
is she the
that
bad guy?
hard, guys.
I believe
I
it's
mean, I don't think
Faruka's
she's-
Salt. I think it's her name.
Veruca's Salt.
I think they might be on the soundtrack. No.
Yeah.
I mean, look, like
Like
she.
I don't see her as the villain. Like I think that
Yeah.
it's a really interesting, like there's a lot of conversation to be had around the whole like growing up and like owning your responsibility and your personal power in general, like outside of any like witchy shit. Like I think that it's a really interesting play on like just needing to take responsibility for your own actions and like knowing like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know, like how to handle things. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she's the bad guy, but like she's more of just like
No, I mean she's the one. I guess like if you were to put it in the most pure horror genre terms, like she's the one where she's disturbed the I don't know the way things are supposed to be, right?
Right,
Like she's
right.
the one who's most out of line and needs to be put back in line.
right.
But ultimately, like she herself is not like I actually felt the saddest part of this movie is the like final shot of her in that like insane asylum where you're just like,
I
Yeah,
know.
it's really
this is
it's
not
real
like
for-
cool. This is actually really brutal.
it's really
you know?
interesting that that is the image they leave you on for sure. Like that they kind
Yeah.
of felt because I guess you're thinking like, well, what happened to her? You know, like I almost that could have been a thing tacked on like after a screening or something. You know what I mean? Because it feels like the movie ends and then they just cut to it.
Well, and it feels
Yeah.
overly. It to me, it felt like it. This was like a 90. It felt like overly punishing. Like they felt the need to punish her more than I needed to see.
So I think
for my modern sensibility.
I think
Yeah, for
definitely
sure.
watching this back for the first time in years and being a lot older than the last time I saw it, I thought about her character more than I did in the other girls' characters. Like I feel like the movie is suggesting that they let this power in that they weren't ready for, and it's essentially if you're not sort of like pure with it, that it's like corrupting. And then she is the one that to begin with, because of her life, I think has the most anger and bitterness in her, like, and that's shown as her character trait. And so then I think that when she gets this power, she's already kind of dark enough internally that it takes her to that place because you never see remorse from her. That's the interesting. That's I think why
Yeah.
the film feels
Well-
so comfortable coding her as the full-on villain at the end because you never
Right.
see remorse, whereas the other girls, they make it a point at several points in the movie to show you that they're really just kind of being pulled along for the ride by their friend.
Well, I think that like I mean on the more witchier side, I mean like they talk about the rules of 3 and how like whatever you put out in the world, you have to be ready to take back like 3 times. And I mean that really is, and they talk about this too, like it's do unto others how you want them to treat you. And I think that yes, they probably had to be a little more heavy handed in the like imagery because like she already goes crazy with this power and we see that. So like there's really no way to end that without there being like a very blatant like, okay, well now she's locked up in an insane asylum. Like
Yeah.
John was saying, like it's a much more like tangible kind of ending.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right too, Eric. Like they're just trying to give you more of a succinct like
Yeah.
not necessarily
'cause we saw-
you're the bad guy, but like this is what happened because
Well,
of
it-
this.
Because otherwise you don't
interesting
really
because
see.
We saw her crazy go to here, and you got to see it go to here to be to
Right.
Pay off.
I
But
love
it's interesting that like so they do a very really good job of setting up the problem that each one of these high schoolers has, right? And Farouk definitely has been through some stuff. Like Skeet Aldrich has like apparently like slept with her and then just like pretty much spread it all over school. Like he's fucked her over pretty hard. But they kind of go through this process and everyone has their thing that they want, right? Like Nev Campbell wants to be beautiful. The other girl wants revenge on her bully. And then Farouk just wants like all the power. Like, so
Joe. Farouk was a 90s wrestler. Just so you know.
Veruza.
Faruza and I
Farouk.
Her
side
name's
topic.
Nancy in the
I
movie.
mean, the least you
Oh
could
my
do if you're gonna
God.
jerk it to her is to know her name. Like, Jesus.
You know, Joe.
That's asking very
Maybe
little
he likes
of
it better
you.
not knowing her name.
You know,
Very
Joe.
little.
The lady has a
Cece's
point.
just coming
Cece,
out.
the VHS cover was so stained and unlegible by the time.
Oh my god.
Uh,
Did you
it
watch
was
it
like
on mute too?
It was a misshapen F, and then
Oh my
like
gosh.
there was a Z or something. Hey, you open this can of worms. all right?
I'm just saying the least you could do is know her name. That's all I'm asking. I mean, I think I do. You were bringing up a good point that I just want to like touch on real quick. Like, I think that it's interesting that they have Nancy's character as this like, I mean, they blatantly call her white trash. She comes from a much poorer, like less to do family, and it's not necessarily that she I mean, what she asks for is the power, but it's not necessarily revenge. It's just that she feels so insignificant to everybody else that she had like that's the only thing she knows to ask for that makes her a step above these people who've made her life this, I mean, it's kind of like the rest of the girls, except hers is compounded so intensely that like she has nothing to ask for but the highest, and she's
it's a valid point.
right,
Like,
like she's too broken to handle that, or
each
to
one
know
of them
that she
kind of
can't.
has like one thing where she has
Right.
a bunch of shit swirling around. So
Yeah.
like, I don't. What do you ask for? To like not live in a trailer, or do you ask for this guy that sticked you over to get effed,
Right.
or like,
I mean, she kind of took care of both problems.
I giant crush on her after this movie. Like, I think a lot of people were terrified of her. I head over heels.
I think I'm more into like either Nev Campbell or Rachel True in this movie. I feel like
I always loved
had-
Rachel True, but
Yeah.
I also really like Feruza.
there was
Because
a
like
big.
my mom would never let me go full goth, but if I were allowed to, I probably would have looked like Feruza.
So she's actually she's in Horror Noir. If anybody's seen that, the documentary.
Rachel True.
Yeah, the documentary in Shudder, because I think they talk about the craft briefly and just like
Mhm.
how her being cast in it and that kind of stuff. But there was like there was some.
got to get a tarot card reading from her,
Nice.
and got to meet her and said she was super amazing.
There was some controversy recently where like some convention was trying to put together a like a craft reunion, and they started advertising, and she's like, was nobody gonna call me?" Or
Yeah, they only asked the white chicks.
kind of
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
some bullshit. You got to have all four.
I don't know what happened to it. I'm sure something happened after that. I mean, no one's having a reunion now, so
Yeah, but they screwed up
But yeah,
because
I
Rachel
just-
True is.
I remember it blew up on Twitter. I mean, she's she's just as integral a part of the movie as all the
Oh,
other
for
ones.
sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest,
she was in
she's
Half
kind of-
Baked too. Like,
I think she's the best actress out of the
Yeah.
four of them.
oh,
in this
hands
movie.
down, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
Man.
like, how are we not talking
I
about
mean,
that?
I
all
also
the
think
time?
I
Let's be honest,
really
Nev Campbell's character is mostly like looking at the ground and mumbling. Like, it's not.
I really
Well-
like Robin Tunney as an actress, and she like was in a bunch of fairly high profile things in the 90s, and I went and looked. She's like been consistently acting, but not in big stuff. But it's been like
Right.
Mostly on TV now.
it's been kind of a
Yeah.
trickle. It's like a couple projects a year.
Well, it's funny. They said that she had to wear a wig in this because she had just done Empire Records, where she had
Right.
a shaved head.
Shaved
Oh,
head.
that's right. She's
and
in
so-
Empire
Makes
Records,
sense now
that's right.
because that looked like a wig.
My
does.
story of her is
It does,
a buddy of mine that I worked with in my first job when I moved to New York City. He actually met her at a bar, and she was annihilated. And like they struck up a conversation, and then like as she was leaving, she just like full on made out with him. And as she was walking out, she said, "Now you can tell all your friends that you made out with the girl from The Craft."
That's great.
And then walked out of the bar.
Nice.
That sounds
That is
great.
amazing.
What a
Yeah.
story.
Cool.
And he did.
But this was also like, I mean, I was out of college, so it would have been like 6-7 years like after this movie came out, like maybe even close to like 10. Like it was,
Well,
it
I
was
guess
a ways.
she knew. I mean, she knew what she would be noticed for.
Yeah.
I love that.
How
I'm
about,
not gonna lie. I
Fairuza-
love that. I love that energy.
Yeah.
Did you all see? I only saw this when I was researching a little earlier. Feruza is the girl in Return to Oz. She's Dorothy.
Yeah, that was her.
Blew my mind.
That was like her
Not
big.
only that, she was
Yeah.
also the lead in The Worst Witch, which I assume was a
Yeah.
prequel to this.
I-
And Bobby Boucher's
I was about
girlfriend.
to say,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just don't
Vicky
remember her as
Valancourt,
Bobby
obviously.
Boucher's girlfriend.
I mean, so now I'm on IMDb because now I'm thinking like, what happened to her?
I
still
had
working.
such a crush on her. It was like her mouth was 95% of her face, and
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, here's what's funny. I cannot find her on
I can back him
IMDb.
up.
I cannot find her on IMDb because I can't spell her name.
Did you
well, no,
try
just
to
look
say
up The Craft.
to your phone and
Oh,
see
that's
what-
smart. That's smart.
Well, she was on a couple of episodes of Ray Donovan.
Oh, she was in Almost Famous. She was the girlfriend in American History X.
Yes. She was on The Sopranos for like one episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
American
I
History
see.
X Joe came out like literally 20 years ago.
No, that was 98. That was
Yeah.
not long after this.
So
Yeah.
yeah, 20. Sorry,
Oh,
22
I'm
years
sorry, you're
ago.
saying that, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird? there was 2 years in between The Craft and her American History X. Like it seems like she's so much older in that, mostly because of the whole
She's
racist
in-
I mean,
thing.
that
She's
was
in
the other thing
some-
I wanted to bring up. It's like all of the actors. So this is one thing that I think has changed a lot since the '90s to now. Is like you see like Sabrina the Teenage Witch or whatever. Those kids, at least to me, look like they're in high school. Maybe because I'm older, but my
Yeah.
guess is they're younger on average than like these guys were in. I mean, someone
You know what,
mentioned
though?
20s, like
in
yeah,
mid
20s
people,
and
people, especially in the '90s, when they started, and this is just kind of goes back to my early like horror internet days, because I was really getting into the horror community in like 2000, 2001, and at that point we were still being so inundated by Scream ripoffs that people like there was definitely a contingent of like sometimes weirdly aggressive fans who hated anything like Scream related. It was just like Scream was almost like a weird
yeah.
bad word in the horror community in like certain corners
I
of it
was,
for a while.
I was one of those people, Eric.
And
That was
one of the
me.
complaints was always like, oh, they cast 30 something people as teenagers. But now it's like, but now they do the opposite. Now they cast teenagers and I'm an adult and it's creepy. And I'd rather watch, like, if they're going to be putting them in like sexual situations, I'd rather be watching somebody that can confidently be like, this person was 22 when this happened. Do you know what I mean?
I mean,
Yeah.
they're in there. I mean, even Sabrina, the like Kieran Shipka, like she was born in 1999. So I mean,
What is that?
she's
Oh, I
That's
haven't,
only
I haven't watched.
21,
I haven't
like,
watched that.
it's
I'm
not
just
that
saying.
old.
Holy
I'm just saying in
fuck.
general. Like I think that the trend has changed. That largely they do cast more accurately now. In
No,
most
I-
cases.
that's what I was saying. Like Skeet Ulrich was 26 in this movie.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
insane.
26 like versus 18, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you know.
It's
So
a pretty-
you look at like the entertainment industry right now, though. There, a lot of these kids that are getting cast, teenagers getting cast as teenager in these movies nowadays, have already been acting for 10, 15 years because there's so many.
Well, they're doing Disney shit.
So
Yeah.
many tweenage television.
Well,
shows.
Feruza was that person. To
And
a
that's
certain
the other,
extent.
just the other point about this movie that I thought was kind of interesting, just kind of context wise, is I always liked it because I always kind of just gave most things a chance, and I was always renting movies and checking things out. But I definitely remember, and I don't know if you guys had the same experience. Like, I feel like when The Craft comes up, there's a certain contingent of dude horror fans, and I don't say this like I'm not. This isn't judgmental. I'm just saying like who when they were growing up, just kind of felt like this was like a chick horror flick or something and never watched it. Like some people are like,
well, that
oh yeah, I
was
love The
almost
Craft.
definitely why I didn't see it. Like I just
I have,
like
yeah,
never
I've
got around to
100%
it.
had, I've 100% had conversations with people, especially back at the time, where they just were like, "Oh, why would you watch that?" You know what I mean? And that, I just thought that was
Well,
kinda interesting.
now I hear Joe, and I'm like, I've missed out on a lot of
Well,
stuff.
yeah, I don't know, John. Like, apparently we ran in different circles because me and my friends were like Nev Campbell in a schoolgirl uniform. Like, yes, like I'm not gonna rent that. I'm gonna buy that. I want.
Special edition DVD. Yes, please.
I need this in fucking laser disc right now.
That is the highest resolution you could have gotten back then, Joe.
Yeah, well aware.
Analog.
Here's a random thought to close this as we're getting close to the end. I always loved the shot when Nev Campbell, after she did her glamour and made herself pretty because she, wasn't pretty before. I always thought that was a pretty iconic scene, the way they shot it and the way they did the reveal. Do you think Ginger Snaps was an homage to that when they did the same thing with Ginger when she came back into the school after she started her transformation?
I did actually think of Ginger Snaps briefly, only because of like the coming of age stuff, like John's talking about, this really like kind of like sexual awakening stuff, because that whole thread is really at the heart of Ginger Snaps as well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But there was that scene when Ginger came to school after she first started, when she first got her white streak and she came back strutting down the middle of the hallway. She didn't come to
Slow-mo.
school with her sister.
Yeah.
Kind of the same feel
Yeah.
to it.
I love that scene. So I know Cece posted the gif of the slow-mo Frizzball blows the kiss. That's just classic.
Yeah.
Classic 90s. Very good.
so many classic moments.
I feel like they're really, I don't know what they're doing with this remake, but I feel like this movie would be suited for almost like a sequel remake where one of these women is like a mother
Yeah.
and has a kid with like the power. Like it's like tailor
She's
made.
the mom in the picture.
Yeah.
She's the dead mom.
But it's like
Honestly, you could do a sequel with all these girls back.
it's tailor made to do that. Yeah, because they would be the age now where they'd have teenage daughters,
Yeah.
Nev Campbell is available. So here we go.
I
Let's
would
make
like to
that-
see bring back Ruben. Bring back Ruben Tooney. Little sauerkraut,
Ah,
little melted
Lord.
cheese. Can't go wrong with that.
Skeet Ulrich. You know, they roll him back in.
Fuck that
Dude,
guy.
his-
I don't know
he-
why, like, he just annoys the fuck out of
He
me.
does annoy me, but I would say he's like, and Cece, I'm interested in your opinion on this. I don't know how you feel on Skeet Ulrich, but I would say that he is more attractive in Scream. Like his
Yes.
hair in this movie is god awful, and something about the
mean,
long hair in
listen,
Scream is
his
more-
Can
hair
you
is
rate
so-
Skeet Ulrich appearance?
Yes.
so
If
greasy
you're going
and
to
like
be a Skeet Ulrich fan, I would say that Scream is definitely the highest, even though he is so greasy in it.
greasy.
Like the thought of touching him, like you would just
Yeah.
slide off of him.
His hair
But
is wet the entire movie.
It's so wet, it's disgusting. But this movie, I'm like, I don't even like he.
He needs the
No.
long hair to help distract from his face.
Yeah.
What?
That's what I'm
No
trying to say.
love for 2020 era. Skeet Ulrich is F.P. Jones in Riverdale.
Yeah.
He's such a
He looks-
creepy fucker.
I know he's always in the shadows, and he's really like kind of sad.
He's
And-
got
There
like
are
those,
actually-
like, buck teeth. Like, you just want to
There are
like push him in
few-
a train. or
There are a
something.
few actors though, and this is to his credit because like he tends to play these guys who are kind of like on the edge all the time and kind of teeter back and forth between you don't know if he's okay or if he's sinister.
Right.
Like this movie, Scream. He's also in that movie with God. Okay, I'm helping with this one. Jack Nicholson plays a writer.
Oh, it's as good as it gets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, is
Skeet
he in there?
Skeet Ulrich plays a painter in that movie who paints Greg Kinnear, and then but it's really all a scam, and then him and his friends like beat the crap out of him and rob him. But it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's like he's seems normal, and then he turns, and he's so good at that moment where
Yeah.
his eyes turn, and he's just like that'll send a chill down your spine, man. That when he gives you that creepy look.
Well, it was
Yeah.
all downhill when he was uncredited thug in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original.
Oh my
Listen,
god.
man, Casey Jones or bust. I don't want to hear
Yeah,
shit about
no, I-
anybody
Oh,
else except
dude,
I'm
Eliza
with you.
Scotus as Casey Jones.
Casey Jones,
I'm with you on that.
Casey Jones in that first movie is maybe the coolest movie character of all time.
It's Elias Codius, man. He's
Yeah.
still amazing.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Dude, I like he's really the reason I started watching Chicago PD. Like he's not even on Chicago PD anymore, but he was, and that's why I started watching it.
He was in the Let Me In. He was in that
Mhm.
remake too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah.
Casey Jones. God, I love that
Who the fuck are you guys talking about?
movie. The original Ninja
We're down.
Turtles
We're
movie,
down a couple
Joe.
rabbit holes now, Joe. Don't worry. About it.
Elias Cody's? I have no idea who the hell this guy is.
Yeah,
You'd
You'll-
recognize
not
him if you
watch-
saw him.
Ninja Turtles?
I'm looking at, yeah, like I remember that, but like you guys are talking like he's a thing. And
He
like I'm
is.
looking
Yeah.
at his picture. I'm
he's
like,
a thing.
the fuck are
He
you?
is a thing. He had long hair and his hockey stick
Mm.
all day long.
it's all sinewy.
Interesting.
You know, he's got the cut off sweatshirt thing and the mask.
Yes.
Receding hairline. All right. I guess we were into different things in high school.
He didn't have a receding hairline in high school, and he's old now. He's allowed to have a receding hairline. Jesus.
Wait,
Yeah,
is this
Joe.
the guy from?
Listen, y'all talking about dad bods last episode, and now we're receding hairlines. Jesus Christ! I hope all of y'all really keep
No,
up with your
listen.
health regimens
Let's-
during this quarantine because
By-
I'm running a marathon this weekend.
how's
Cece.
your hair? Why are you wearing a hat? Do you have a receding hairline?
Is this the guy from Wet Hot American Summer?
I've stopped listening. I can't. I'm so distracted.
No.
Cece, I do actually, and that is why I'm wearing a hat. Thank you very
Hold on.
much.
But you're
Now-
not even talking about it. That's fine. You're allowed to have a receding hairline. This asshole's making fun of
Oh,
you.
I know he's an asshole. I know. I'm aware.
Cece, Jesus.
Hold
I
on,
can't-
Joe
I
is
can't
conf-
focus
Joe is
on
confused.
fucking
Bot
Christian
shaming, Lord.
with your
Joe's
yapping.
confusing Christopher Milani and Elias Codius.
Who the hell is Christopher Milani?
Oh, he's awesome.
From Law and Order SVU?
Oh,
and-
my-
He has-
isn't it
he has
Maloney?
His own Law and Order show.
Yeah.
Isn't
Correct.
it?
You
John.
guys tell me that these are different people, and I will call you liars.
John.
Oh my Lord.
Isn't it Maloney?
I think it's Milani.
I don't know.
That does not sound like
Yeah.
a last name.
Oh, Megan Maloney. That's who you're thinking
Is
of.
this like a Shyamalan
No,
situation?
No,
It's
it's
Emmy.
M-E-L-O-N-I.
Yeah.
I'm not. Nothing against this guy. I don't think I've ever seen anything else he's been in other than these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies.
Well, you saw Let Me In.
Joe, we
and
did
you
let me
saw,
in. He's like a well-respected actor, Joe. Can we just move the fuck on, please?
He was on an episode of The Sopranos. All
I
right.
think he's
yeah,
in
he's
Is
great.
he in Haunting in Connecticut? Was he in that film? That was.
Oh,
You know.
Oh, he was in
I
that.
don't think you. I don't think
There
he
you go.
I don't remember him. I don't remember him being in that
Snubbed
movie.
by
but-
the Oscars.
I think you. I gotta check.
Cece's
This out.
muted the whole show.
I'm sorry, what? I told you I was distracted.
Yeah,
So the
I don't
craft.
know. I've never seen him.
Wait, so does anyone want to pick a favorite song off the soundtrack?
So here's the thing. I'm glad
Whatever
you.
that Love Spit song is.
Well, I'm glad
is
you
my
brought that up
favorite.
because, so my only real complaint, and it's like half complaint, half not, but if the '90s did kind of ruin one thing, it's that largely, especially by the mid '90s, there are exceptions to this, but largely by the mid '90s, horror films had like eschewed having themes. Like every classic '80s horror movie had a theme that you hear and you go, boom, that's the fog. Boom, that's this. You
Yeah.
know.
Or
And they
like
got,
the Pixies, Where Is My Mind? Wasn't that from like Cruel Intentions or something?
well,
It was
so
at the
then
end
what it
of,
became.
Fight Club.
What it became in the 90s was tons of licensed music. And really this was before Scream, but once Scream happened, it blew the F up because the Scream soundtrack actually sold like a shitload of copies. But what they would do is just get a ton of licensed music and then just like the most generic ass orchestral filler music. And that's kind of my only complaint about this movie. I didn't recognize any of the licensed stuff, but it all has that sound that this I did enjoy. Like it all just sounds so 90s. It's unreal,
90s,
even though I didn't
yeah.
recognize any of it. But all the orchestral stuff is like completely forgettable, which is kind of a
Yeah.
bummer. But
Yeah, but
Oh,
I feel
you
like
mean
in
the-
that
yeah,
day and
the
age,
s-
like they weren't really thinking about that. Like it was all about the soundtrack.
I was gonna say,
well,
the
but that's
score,
my
yeah,
point. Is that was a big shift from the 70s, well, especially the
Yeah.
80s. Like, and I think now movies are getting back to it, which is a really good thing in the last like 5 or 10 years or so. But that kind of sucked. That is one thing. The biggest exception I think in the 90s would have been Candyman, which had like Philip Glass's like iconic
Yeah,
score.
no, I mean for the most part. So this is what's weird about this. And didn't you? I think you played the trailer to this movie a couple weeks back.
I did,
Right,
in which
where-
I learned that the name of the school is St. Bernard High.
So
Which is
this
so
is the thing.
stupid.
Like when they marketed this film, I mean, Cece mentioned it was a hit, or like it went #1, but I don't know that they knew how to market this film, and that's like another reason when I look back on it, I don't remember having all that much interest. Like it was marketed almost like a teen thing, and you see that in the soundtrack, right?
Mm.
You connected it to Scream, which I think makes a ton of sense. Scream was marketed a little bit more straight horror. Like you look at the soundtrack, it's all sort of like alt rock from the 90s. Like these were like real acts from the 90s. So they looked at this and said, this is a chance for us to have a teen hit and then sell a shitload of soundtrack albums as well. Like this was one of these kind of like marketing kind of 360 deal. Like we're gonna get Letters to Cleo and Jewel on this soundtrack, and I don't know, like
Jewel is not on the soundtrack, John.
no, I mean, at least according to Wikipedia, she is on the soundtrack. But yeah.
Ralph.
So in any event, I guess my point was like, I actually think that one of the reasons this became somewhat of a cult hit is that it was poorly marketed, but like it was a good movie and people found it and sort of like loved it in spite of the marketing. And like the soundtrack now I think has nostalgia value. Like I actually really like the soundtrack. I like to your point, Eric, the score is bad, but the soundtrack is good. But I enjoyed it mostly for like nostalgic reasons. I mean, I'm sure if I went and listened to it, I'd be like, yeah, some of these songs are pretty good, but it's not that it's like a great soundtrack. I don't know if that makes
and
sense.
this was too. It's worth
kind of weak, like 90s wise. Like there's not.
It's worth pointing out too that
I'm with
like
you.
96, 97, we're talking about the absolute historical height of the music business. So it was it's a monetary thing because you can then, what they discovered was that you could then make additional money by releasing a soundtrack. Like I owned Scream 1 through 3 soundtracks and used to like listen to them all the time because they had a ton of shit on.
Yeah, no, that's
Dude, the first Scream soundtrack has that Red Right Hand song on
Oh
it.
yeah.
Oh my god, so good.
this won an MTV Movie Award for Best Fight between Fairuza Balk and Robin Tunney.
So that whole sequence has this really probably my favorite shot in the movie is when there's kind of some good foreshadowing where she mentions being afraid of snakes and having these nightmares. So then when she's kind of being attacked by Fairuza Balk, before Fairuza Balk really shows up, they've got like a almost, I don't know what you call it, like a garden room kind of with like stained glass ceiling and like snakes piled on it and like slithering around, and then she looks at a wall and they're like piled all the way up. It must have just been a trick perspective shot, but they're like piled all the way up onto the glass. I love that. Like that little visual touch. And then when she starts fighting back and Firuza Balk gets scared and suddenly cockroaches start climbing out of her sleeves and she's just trying to like ignore them and flick them off. Like that stuff was all really well done.
I don't care for snakes.
Yeah, no, and if you don't like snakes, this movie is probably gonna trigger you a little bit. All right, guys. Anybody, anything else, Cece, on your pick of the craft? Did this bring back witchy memories for you?
I mean, I watch this a lot, so I literally watch it once a year. I mean, you've seen photos when all my girlfriends come over and we have our Halloween pumpkin carving, and so I watched it in October, and then literally right afterwards we tried to play Light as a Feather. So yeah, it's a fun revisit all the time.
We should mention that Natalie was just posting in Slack that they're going to do a watch along of this movie on Slack this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's on Netflix.
On Easter, the Lord's Day.
It's on Netflix. It'll be Sunday night. You can hang out with our patrons. So patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. Check it out. All right, guys, it's going to do it for the craft. Let's take a quick break and then then do some fan mail.
You know, a lot of people write me and say, "Hey, Joe Bob Briggs, just what is monster vision?" You don't need no special glasses or an insect's head, just a healthy love for slime and disrespect for the dead. We'll talk about some movies by the old double wide, and when you get that creepy feeling creeping up inside, well then you got monster vision. It's a heck of a fright. We're tearing the heart out of Saturday night. These monster vision movies serve a primitive drive, 'cause watching people die can make you feel so alive. So throw away your clicker now, the flicks of a gun, 'cause there's nothing you can do while fully dressed. It's as fun as watching TNT beneath the bug zapper light. We're tearing the heart out of Saturday night. Tearing the heart out of Saturday night. Hey, I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and you're listening to the Bloody Good Horror Podcast.
Send feedback to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or on Twitter using hashtag AskBGH. Join Patreon to get back episodes and much more. Patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror.
And we're back. Joe,
Yeah, what's up, man?
big news. I paid off my third loan to Tom Nook today.
I paid off my second last night, maybe
Oh,
my
nice.
third.
So wait, do you have extra rooms though? I'm just gonna get my first extra room
I have
tomorrow.
not opened it up today. I should have an extra room as of
Nice.
today, but I haven't looked.
Could put more stuff in there, Joe.
Yeah, just more like shit on the floor. I don't understand.
Well,
this
you can
game.
put it on tables, Joe. You can hang it on the wall. Like it's a whole. There's lots of things you can do, Joe.
I don't have a table.
I do have to say though, I'm very much enjoying our Slack little Animal Crossing community. It's been a fun distraction.
I just, with how busy I've been at work, like I'll open up that channel and there'll be like 400 posts about like, I don't know, fucking a firefly or something, and I'm like, I can't catch up with this, like, and there's no use.
I don't know why. I will never understand people going into Slack and being like, I need to catch up on everything I missed. I literally log in, I hit
No,
jump to
I'm done.
recent, and I see whatever the last thing that was talked about was.
Yeah.
And do I care? Like, there's
No,
you can't.
especially in that channel, like I guarantee there's nothing being
But, like,
said here that like
you're
is
gonna,
gonna be important.
you're gonna drive yourself nuts by even entertaining that instinct that you're somehow gonna keep up with it.
Yeah.
It's the point.
Yeah.
It's
Here
like
we
a
are.
it's like a stream. You log in, you kind of jump in midstream, and then you jump out, and you don't go back. That's how it works, Joe.
Yeah, it's the internet.
Um,
I appreciate Cece's take on it, where she just shows up anytime someone mentions her and then disappears again.
Yep. I mean, you invoke the spirit, I show up, and then I'm like, see you later.
Man,
What is it like? I feel like we need to get the entire Slack community to like just for a few days tag her in everything.
I would literally jump on every time and be like, oh, okay. Oh, no. Okay.
Joe, there is something else special in your feed today.
Yeah. Well, there's something special in everybody's feed, and that is the debut episode, all 8 minutes of it, of Ask Joe. Maybe the most important thing that we've ever put out. Like, I mean, arguably, but there's really no argument. Like, it is the most important thing. Yeah, the question and answer podcast you've all been waiting for. Just like a fun kind of spin-off thing when we decided to do, where folks can send in their questions to Joe at Bloody Good Horror, or just send them in private message on any of our socials, or wherever you want to, and I answer them on the show. It's in our main feed. It's not behind the patron wall. It's out there for all to enjoy.
Can I be honest with you, Joe?
Hmm?
As much as I enjoyed it, I was really disappointed. It was only 8 minutes long.
Well, I mean, that was kind of the idea, right? Like, really what I wanted this, mostly because like we're all working from home, we all just need a distraction. Like, I would love for this just to get like a daily thing, like a few people sending questions and I do it, and like we post it up like every day or every other day. Like, how long can I talk about like what you should do with your spare time? Like, it's just, here we are. This is what it is.
I don't know, Joe. The Eric show is 30 minutes long.
I actually appreciated that Joe respected my time. It didn't feel like he had to.
Well, that's the idea. Like,
scramble at me.
I want this to be something that, like, you wake up in the morning, you can listen to it for 10 minutes, and then like you can go about your day. Like, to be fair, Eric, you record one episode a year, so the fact that it's 30 minutes is kind of a letdown too.
All right. Okay. Let's see how far we go with this Joe show, and then we can talk. It's in your feeds, people, if you want to hear Joe's life advice. Again, a creepily earnest Joe, which works for some people.
It turned out to be like I planned on goofing on the whole thing, and then like I read the questions, and it turned out to be like legitimate. Oh well, almost. Let's not go too far, but like a nugget of like a real answer in there.
Other things we got going on.
Yeah. Well, this
them.
Saturday we're doing the BGH Halloween, which is just like a kind of a fun thing we're doing on our social medias or on Slack or wherever you're listening to us. Really, it's just we're all inside. We're all doing our social distancing. So my family, the past few weeks, we've been doing like every Saturday has a different theme. Like this past weekend, we did a trip to Disney World, like in our house, where we just kind of hung out, wore our ears. We made some like copycat food from the parks and like watched ride POVs. So this Saturday we're gonna do Halloween. So we're gonna dress up. We're hoping everybody on social media will dress up or do whatever. Watch spooky movies. Just kind of share whatever they're doing and just kind of make a community out of it. So I'm very excited about it. I do have to run a marathon Saturday morning. Because I was supposed to do the Milwaukee one on Saturday, but now it's virtual, so it's going to be an interesting day. But we hope everybody can join in.
I think those are super fun ideas. So I commend
It's been
you and
really
your family.
Like not like it kind of popped in my head the other day or like a few weeks ago, where it's just like my point, like. I understand we're all complaining about like being trapped inside and having to do our thing, but like I feel awful for my kids, like especially my 8-year-old, because like she's missing time with like her friends, and like she'll like Facebook like video with them and stuff, but like she's an 8-year-old and like she can't interact with people, so like just do something fun for your family, like, and I feel like this is a good way to kind of like make them look forward to something where like every day is the same. So it's been a lot of fun, like, so there you are.
Plot twist, Joe's actually the most sentimental of all of us.
I know.
It's my menopause and it is going strong.
Joe's got the vapors. All All right. There's
We
other
have
stuff.
some
Oh,
other new podcasts coming out.
Oh yes.
Take it away.
Yes. As soon as I send some episode synopses to John, you'll have 2 new episodes of Something Red. A good friend of the show, Dusty, he and I talk about Stephen King's book The Outsider, as well as the HBO show. And then our wonderful staff member Andrew and I talk about The Cabin at the End of the World, which is not a very uplifting book, but we had a good conversation about it, so we had fun. That's the important part.
Yeah, and there's another one in the can, ready to go.
Ready to go.
You can check that out. Patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. Sign up, and you'll get access to the spinoffs. You get a feed. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm very tired, guys. I'm sorry.
You
what-
haven't been outside today. No.
It's getting to me, John. What do we got? Oh, real quick, Joe. We already picked our movie for next week.
Yeah. I think we've been kind of floating around, but I think we're gonna do Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, which is coming to Shudder on the 13th.
Very exciting. Trying to keep it
it's
light again.
Yeah. Another one, Cece, of young Joe's awakenings.
Yes.
So
This one, I mean, this one is pretty obvious. I feel like I had a bit of an awakening to this, so it's okay.
I mean,
Who among us? No, I'll stop there.
I would say all of us.
I'm pretty interested to go back and watch this one because I have not seen it in probably 20 plus years. But I think it should be a lot of fun.
I spoke briefly with her at a convention like last year. She still looks amazing.
Yeah, she's great, and I love her. Like she's, not to get political, but like she's very, not outspoken isn't the right word, but like she's very vocal about her beliefs, which I think is awesome. Like especially
the other thing that might be good homework is if you listen to Mick Garris's podcast that's called something that I can't remember right now. 2 months ago, maybe he did a show with her, and it was like friggin' riveting. Like she grew up like was around a lot of these like Las Vegas go-go shows, or I don't know. Like it's just her child is insane. She's got this crazy story how she ended up where she is, and she's a really interesting person. What the hell's the name of the show?
I'm looking now. I'm like completely.
Yeah, I know. I've listened to it too, but I can't think of it.
I did not realize. I think it was Darren on Slack who alerted me of this, but she apparently is the model, and she doesn't remember this, but on Tom Waits' Small Change, the cover art, there's a stripper in the back, and apparently that's supposed to be her.
Oh.
So the podcast is Postmortem. That's
Postmortem.
Yeah.
It's honestly, I like that show. It was one of the best episodes I've heard. So
nice.
It's good pre-listening before.
I'm going to download it now.
She's a big animal advocate, isn't she?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I got 5.5 hours to 6 hours of running on Saturday, so I'll give it a go.
What do we got on Twitter?
We got a lot of tweets on Twitter. We are at BG Horror, and we use the hashtag every week. Ask BGH. I got a few in me. It's gonna be good. First up from our buddy COW Flanagan. That's Hoagie Lover. Proven, you can't beat a dead horse enough. Yo, have any of yous been in a coven or social club like the Masons? What hijinks y'all get in? Hey yo, I ate a lot of soggy biscuits in the corrections academy. Yum yum.
I would have to be social to be in a social club, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not, but my grandfather's a Mason.
Oh. Wow. Maybe he knows John's grandfather.
Active Mason?
Well, I mean, he's 90, so I don't know that you could say he's active, but
he definitely has all the secrets.
Do what?
He definitely has all the secrets then, right?
Yeah. Maybe not like the most up-to-date ones, but I'm sure he's got some.
He's got some real zingers about Carter.
I'm sure.
Next up from Book of Faces, which I think might be a first-time question. Is the hand sanitizer from my local brewery safe to drink? # Hashtag beer guts.
I saw that a lot of places are starting to use their equipment to make sanitizer. It's pretty wild, man.
Yeah, a lot of distilleries are.
I mean, I think these places, like, I really feel for a lot of my local breweries. Like, these people spent all their money getting this place open, and now they're kind of hit with this, trying to figure out how to do it. So they're doing what they can. So yeah, do whatever you can. Just give them money. Next up, we got two from our buddy at Codiolo. Are you aware of the Glenn Danzig movie? 100%, and I definitely want to check that out one of these weeks.
I heard it's ridiculous, right?
Awful.
Oh, yeah.
It's supposed to be unwatchable.
Awful.
Yeah.
Mother.
Wait, which movie is this? I mean,
Veronica.
Tell your children not to rock my way.
I am fascinated by him.
You know what that was in, Joe? Do you remember MTV's Buzzbin? Remember those CDs they used to release?
Oh, yeah, that was the best one.
I had that.
Had Radiohead on it,
yeah,
too.
Radiohead and Cracker. Remember Cracker?
Blind Melon was on
Blind
that one?
Melon, yeah. That was I actually used to rock that CD.
It's a great album, yeah.
Yeah.
Danzig had a few buzzworthy videos. I sang Mother at the Spooktoberfest back in October. Dedicated it to Mark's ex-girlfriend.
Joe, you
Oh my God.
Joe, you sang your entire running playlist that night, so that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Things escalated. One more from Codiolo. What is the best mixed bag? What is the best mini bag of chips combination? What is the best mixed mini bag of chips combination? I guess those like mixed bags you buy at the grocery store. I never buy those. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Are the bags themselves small, and then they're
Anything
mixed with
without
other small
Fritos.
bags?
I think it's those like giant bags of mini bags that you can buy.
Wait,
I don't-
Hold on,
I
you're
don't buy
against Fritos?
I'm not against them. I'm just saying I don't buy the mini bags.
No, I don't buy those.
No, the ones you get like 30 packs.
Yeah, I don't buy those
Yeah.
stupid
I
little mini bags. Are you
mean-
kidding me? It's so wasteful.
They remind me of what my dog's feet smell like, so it's hard for me to eat
Fritos?
them now.
Dude, my old dog
You
totally.
guys have all seen me. Do I
smelled
look
like-
like I eat mini bags of chips? Come on.
My old dog totally smelled like Fritos.
They all do.
Fritos are delicious.
I
and
mean, they are good. It's just I'm saying it's hard for me to eat them now because all I can think about.
I don't have a
Dog
dog,
feet.
so maybe that's where this lands.
I enjoy a Frito pie.
Hmm.
Uh,
Little
All right,
little
not a lot
walk,
to
little
binge
little walking taco. Ever had
yeah,
one of
there
those,
you
Joe?
go. Help! I'm getting super chunky with all this quarantine snacking. I've been walking a lot, but it's not enough. I'm not going to run unless someone is chasing me. So what else can I do? I'm hungry. Make it stop.
I've got this real like Joe situation going on where I am working out more than ever, but also just stuffing my body full of junk at every turn, and it's like your body's just confused and angry all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. Leslie and I have talked a lot about this. Like, we had been like trying to watch what we eat for a long time, but like right now, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care. Like, whatever gets you by.
I know.
Literally,
man. I know.
as soon as we hang up, I'm about to go upstairs and eat a fucking cake. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care anymore.
As a well-known anxiety and like stress eater, the emotional eater, it all comes down to keeping yourself occupied. Find yourself a project, something.
It was like that that SNL skit that Tina Fey did during the 2016 election, where she coined the term sheet caking.
Yeah.
Where,
Yeah.
What's
I
it
was
like?
gonna suggest hiring someone to chase you. I mean, it seemed like
Yeah,
that,
that
that
works
was
too.
gonna be the.
Yeah. that's a real
incentive,
That's a
but-
real 1% suggestion there, John.
I mean, I don't know. I
It's
think
like
she's
fighting-
married, right?
it's
She has a husband.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could always just go grocery shopping too, because every time I go now, like, I'm just fucking tweaked out, terrified of anyone walking down the aisle that I'm like sprinting left and right. I don't know.
Oh, good lord.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I just feel like right now, like, who cares? Like, one, you're not going out, you're not seeing anyone, so who gives a shit what you look like? Just go crazy.
Yeah.
Right
This is
there.
where this is where
That's-
the show really went off the rails.
This is the life advice you can be getting on the Joe Show. All right, we got two more. One more from Codiolo. Best and worst horror movie non-villainous characters to be quarantined with. I don't know.
Wait,
Like,
what?
I'm too
I'll be
tired for this
honest.
question.
Can it be Breckenmeyer from the Craft?
I mean, I feel like you'd get really tired of dick jokes, though.
I would prefer
Yeah.
Breckenmeyer and Freddy's Dead because he just always has like a pound of weed on him.
It's also good.
I don't know. I think Ed Grimley, which is Martin Short's old character, would be pretty rough to be stuck with.
This is who we want to be stuck
You know
with,
who
though,
I don't
right?
want to be stuck with? Any version of Skeet Ulrich.
Yeah. No, I don't
Yeah,
even
that'd
want to
be
be
bad.
like on the same block as him. Fucking sex offender. All right, last one from our buddy Black Metal Jesus. My neighbor is still throwing weekly parties and the cops won't do anything. Is this a case where murder should be justified?
I mean,
Um,
it depends on the state you're in, because if I called the cops here, they would shut that shit down in a second. But
well,
some
I think
states are
this is
not.
our buddy Mendo, and he is in
Oh,
Vegas.
He's in
Yeah.
a lawless hellscape, so I don't know what to tell you,
Yeah.
buddy.
But
Yeah.
on the bright side, I mean, pretty soon, if they keep partying now, within the next 2 weeks, they're
They'll-
probably going to be laid up and sick.
They'll be dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of youths that have decided
Youths.
that.
Utes.
I mean,
Go
yeah,
on.
it's all these kids who are out of school, but they keep skateboarding, and I'm like, I appreciate you out skateboarding, but like, you can't use your school as a hub to hang out because you're
Wait,
just
what are you
passing
upset
it.
about? Are they hugging each other? Like, what are they
Yes!
doing?
They're
Well, no, they're
making
still
out and
congregating,
shit.
right? Like,
Yes.
Yo,
Yeah.
you can skateboard and be 6 feet away from somebody else.
No.
though.
John, you
Yeah,
think
but
they're
these
I
kids are
understand
not,
that. I'm not
John.
that
That's
old
the
yet.
point.
Dan.
John?
I'm saying these kids are making out and like holding hands and shit, and I'm like,
So
y'all are just
skateboarding is a
successful.
euphemism.
No.
They're playing
skateboarding with their penises.
7 minutes in heaven.
They're telling their parents they're going skateboarding.
They're doing
mean-
backflip alleys into each other's private parts.
That was so
He's
90s.
half piping into my mouth.
That was so 90s, Joe. Flip, kick, and kick flip.
Yeah,
I
I don't
played
know.
Tony Hawk twice.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell these people. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
In New York, they're writing $500 tickets for people just being outside. Basically, it's crazy, but
Good. Like, that's what you gotta do. Like, these fucking
They were
assholes.
doing it in Atlanta, but I haven't seen anybody like being enforced.
well, I heard
Yeah.
in Georgia, what's his name, Kemp? Isn't he opening the beaches? Wasn't that the thing?
Yes, the beaches are still open, and then we have this like giant walkway that goes like all the way around Atlanta called the Beltline, and it's like the biggest thing ever. There's all these restaurants and all this stuff, and that's still open as well. And every day it is so crowded, like it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
yeah.
We have the similar thing. Like, John, you ran along it when you were here in October. And the first nice day we had, like, everybody was out. And the mayor of Chicago was just like, fuck you, we're shutting it down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah, they're
Ken
not.
Paul
They're
didn't
not.
realize that people who didn't show symptoms couldn't
Yeah.
couldn't get other people sick, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
They're not
Like,
messing
3
around.
months after everybody knew that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really not messing around here. But I also feel like in general, it's a city and an area where people understand like, okay, this is what we need to do. Like I was here on the Boston Marathon bombing when they didn't officially say you can't go outside, but they told everybody one day to stay inside. And by the end of the day, they caught the dude. Or like, I remember a snowstorm where, like, because the governor very specifically doesn't like to give orders that are like, you can't, it's illegal. But he'll say, you know, but so like I remember a snowstorm where they're like, don't drive. No, literally there was not a single car on the road. Except for-
Yeah, I feel like you think that, but then there's still like a couple hundred assholes who are out
but
there
it's
doing
not
Yeah.
like the stories that I'm seeing from other states where
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
like
no, I
total
get it.
chaos.
That I love. That's my favorite argument to roll my eyes at on the internet was when they say I care more about my freedom than some dumb virus. Come on, people.
Fucking assholes.
Exactly.
The last one of them.
The good news is next week, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Is that it for Twitter, Joe?
That's it for Twitter, bud.
Don't forget to check out Joe's advice show. That's on the main feed. You can also check out CC's Something Red episode on the Patreon feed coming ASAP. And yeah, just hang in there, guys. There's lots going on at Bloody Good Horror. Join us in Slack. Join the book club on Goodreads. That's a free thing you can do.
Mhm.
And you know, we're doing what we can, and appreciate you guys for sticking around. So hope you
Come
enjoy.
join Slack and hang out and watch the craft this weekend too with the crew for the watch and chat.
Do the watch alongs, yeah. Yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you soon.
See you.
Bye.
Okay, bye now.
Bye bye.